Welcome everyone to Mail Fuzz TV. I am Peter, and joining me is Connor.
We're alive. Well, I'm alive.
Yes. Well, technically they just got a new Deep Space Nine, like, last week, but we recorded that in, like, March, so for us it's been a while.
Yeah.
But yes, we are back with new episodes of Star Trek. Yes, it is a New Year's miracle or something. Of course, the cat wants out immediately. I want everyone to know that when we got on to record, Connor wanted to pat ourselves in the back. Hey, look, we scheduled a recording. We made it on time. Things are going well. And then 30 seconds later, revealed that he had watched the wrong show. So he then went away to watch Next Generation, which is what we're actually talking about today. And now we're recording.
I would like to point out that when we planned this recording, we said sometime in the range of midnight to 1 a.m. to start. I was finished that second watch through, bang on 1. We were still on time.
Yes, but I'm not going to say that was smooth sailing. That was the bumps in the road were had.
Bang on time.
Yes. So welcome everyone. We're going to talk about Star Trek: The Next Generation, Season 7, Episode 8. We're into the final stretch of this show now. So this episode is called Attached. And it's basically Picard and Crusher get kidnapped by an alien government, and there's some backstory to that we'll get into. But I'd say the main premise of the episode is actually that Picard and Beverly have these like transmitters like stuck to the back of their necks, which let them read each other's minds gradually throughout the course of the episode. I'd say that's the main thing that's going on, and then there's like a boring plot about the planet kind of happening in the background.
I literally finished watching this like 10 minutes ago, and I can barely tell you about that other plot because it's just nothing. There is nothing to it.
Yeah, it's one of the more, I don't want to call it lazy, that was a bit mean, but certainly one of the low effort like reasons for things happening. Because I do think as soon as they started reading each other's minds, I thought, okay, I can see like some potential character growth here, probably something romantic because they can see what each other are feeling, and sure enough, it goes down that path, and we get some beats that play out like that. But all the stuff with the alien race just kind of feels like, oh, this is just an excuse for that to happen, and almost none of it feels like it ever really is thematically relevant to what Picard and Beverly Crusher are going through in the episode. There's like a small little irony that I kind of noticed, but other than that, I really couldn't think of a reason why these two plots had to be together. Other than just the fact that it's because of these two, races of people on the planet. It's not even two races, it's the same race, but the two, like, populaces on the planet, two government regimes, whatever you want to call them, because they're feuding on this planet, that's why this kidnapping happens in the first place. But other than that, like, there's nothing that really connects them.
No, it is just because there has to be a reason, and it is very much an afterthought. Like, whoever wrote this episode, clearly the premise that they had was the psychic link, and they were like, "Oh yeah, we need the other stuff as well around it. We'll just fill that in later." That's how it feels, and it's fine is probably putting it strongly, but like it just doesn't matter, does it? That's not what the episode cares about. Which
I think would actually be completely fine and not be even a problem worth mentioning if it was focused accordingly. See if the stuff going on the planet was just a little bit of setup at the start, and then we just followed Picard and Beverly, and they had the meat of the story, and it was all about them, and there's a little bit at the end wrapping up the other stuff because it feeds back in. I think that would be fine. The problem is that this episode spends probably, like, as much as we're saying one thing is clearly what the A plot was in terms of like the writing and one was the B plot, it's not split up where one is more prominent. If anything, the first half of the episode focuses more on all the context as to why this is happening, as opposed to the actual real meat of it, which is because once we get the campfire scene where Beverly and Picard just have a conversation about their feelings, that's actually a very good scene. That's well acted and sort of plays off some things that even goes all the way back to the start of the show. And that's kind of nice. But we spend so much time with like, oh, they're in a cell, they have to get out of the cell, and it's because these two governments don't trust each other, and so on and so on. And we spend a lot of time dealing with that side of things, and all of that is really uninteresting. And by the time you get to that campfire scene, you realize, oh, that's what this episode is about. This is what this episode is for. It's for this scene. It's for these growing closer moments, and everything else around it is just dressing. It's just there to give the context for it, and that's all.
Yeah, and it's quite frustrating because I think the Picard and Crusher stuff is actually quite good for the most part.
Yeah.
And and it is obviously it's elevating the episode, but it's more the other stuff drags it down overall.
Yeah, no, it definitely does drag it. It drags it down into a really mediocre overall feeling, I would say, despite the fact that there are some blips of quality.
Even though the good stuff is actually very good, there's just not enough of it overall.
Yeah, it's like 20% of it's quite good. And it is generally quite good, but it's only 20%, and that's ultimately leaves you a little bit, uneven, unsatisfied.
And that's the thing, like the rest of it, it's not like actively bad. It's not like terrible. We've seen way worse on this show, but it's just bland and just uninteresting.
Yeah, I think the bigger problem with it as well is you can see exactly what it is, like from the second they start like talking about like what this planet is. So the setup for this is that there's this planet where it's kind of split in two. Although I think Beverly says it's more like 70-30 in terms of actual like percentages, but like, so there's one side that wants to join the Federation, and that's why the Enterprise is going there, because they're going to like, make not first contact, but have talks, sort of like assess them, find out what they're wanting, if they're suitable, yada yada. The other side is apparently so separate that they don't factor into this, and Picard voices his concerns that, typically speaking, one of the things they look for in planets joining the Federation is that the planets have gotten over divides, and they're usually a unified planet because it's a sign that they've grown beyond certain ideas of dispute and political things. I did sort of like take a little bit of umbrage with this for a second though, because I thought to myself, look, admittedly, usually if a planet's split into multiple factions, it usually comes with all the bad stuff, and in this episode it proves to be true. But in theory, you could have a planet split into two sides of people who never interact with each other. But they're not like they've both achieved complete peace on either side. They're just like, no, this is our side, that's your side, and we're just never going to intermingle. I think it's possible. That's all I'm saying.
I think it's theoretically possible, sure, but I still don't think they should be joining the Federation because it's not fair on the other side, right?
I mean, the other side can also join the Federation if they want to.
What if the other side doesn't want to? You can't have half the planet join it.
Would it impact the other side? If this
It would probably impact the balance of power if one has intergalactic connections with the Federation and the other one doesn't.
In a way, that's very much what they're concerned about in this episode, I suppose. But yeah, I guess it was just Picard dismissing them a little bit. I thought it was like, yeah, let's give them a chance. Obviously, the rest of the episode proves that they aren't ready to join the Federation, and that's very clear quite quickly. It's as simple as the other side, who's not joining, immediately kidnaps Picard and Crusher from the transport beam. They're just gone. They're in one of their jail cells. And a lot of the stuff on the Enterprise is Riker and co. trying to figure out who's done this, why have they done this, and they start working with like the delegate from like it was the Prit and the Kesh, I want to say, were the names of the two sides. It was something like that anyway.
That sounds right. Prit is definitely one of them.
I think Prit's the one that kidnaps them, and I think the Kesh or the Kesh is the ones that were trying to join the Federation. And they have this delegate from that side who, tries to offer advice, is very apologetic about this has happened, but he's like, yeah, let's send in a squad to get your people back. And Riker's like, whoa, let's not like
let's try something diplomatic first.
Yeah, let's not go straight to like, we'll send in a SWAT team. How about we try and talk to them? And he's like, oh no, trust me, there's no point. These people are savages. And as soon as he says that, you're like, okay, I see exactly where this is going. You're not ready to join the Federation because you and this other side are clearly in a feud. And not only you in a feud, you're both extremely paranoid that the other side is up to something constantly, right? Because the reason why Picard and Beverly are kidnapped is because they believe that the Kesh are forming a military alliance with the Federation, and that's not exactly true. That's not what they're doing, but that's what they're convinced they're doing. And then as soon as this drags on for a little bit, the delegate starts going, wait a minute, what if you've staged this with the Prit, and you're joining with the Prit to form a military alliance against us? And Riker's like, you invited us here. Why would we be joining up with them? But he's convinced. And it all boils up. And honestly, the only moment of this entire plotline I think I got to the point where I kind of enjoyed a scene is when Riker puts the leader of the Prit and him in the same room and like says, all right, start talking like to each other. And like they both basically voice, oh, there's no point in pretending. We know you're working together. And then the other one's like, yeah, no, don't you try and pretend that you're not working with them. We know you're working with them. That was the only time I got amused, because even in the same room, they're like, accusing each other of the exact same thing, and Riker just has to stand there and try and mediate it. It was the only time I got a little bit of enjoyment out of it, was like that, because Riker was in such a difficult position and didn't know how to navigate it, and eventually had to get kind of angry and raise his voice and be like, no, we're talking about this now, whatever. So yeah.
Well, yeah, he tried to get them to sit down and neither of them would sit. I bet Frakes loved that. Any excuse to stand up.
Well, he's got that back problem, you see. You can't.
Yeah, exactly. Hey, we all get to stand? Oh, sign me up for this scene.
I don't think he was going to. I think he was going to walk around because he's the authority figure, and he's trying to mediate and like present some authority. I think it's the right word for it. But regardless, yeah, I mean, like, this is the closest I got to having fun with it, but it kind of suffers from being very clear what it's going to be the entire time. And I think we've had better stories already about a planet who's going to sign up for the Federation and join them, but realizing, oh, they're not quite the right fit. And the episode we got of that a couple of seasons ago was such a good episode, because even the leader of the planet had to accept at the end, yeah, we're not ready. I wish we were, but we're not. And it was kind of bittersweet, and it had a lot of weight to it. And then here it's just sort of like a goofy backstory for what's actually important in the episode, and it just, falls a bit flat, I think, as a result. Yeah. So
it's a shame. It is a shame, but like I say, it's just, it feels like they really had a thing they wanted to tell with Picard and Crusher, and then they just like didn't have enough runtime to like pad it all the way out. They had like a couple of key scenes that they really wanted to do, and they were like, right, what do we fill around this? And they just kind of just.
Yeah, what's so weird to me about that, though, is that I feel like you could fill out most of the runtime with just those two. Like,
oh, you could.
Because they do that thing where it's like, okay, one hears like one thought, and they go, I didn't say anything. Oh, never mind then. And it's like, they sort of slowly realize they're hearing each other's thoughts, but not all the time. Just like something will bleed through, just here or there. And then it starts to happen a bit more often, and they realize it's happening. I'm like, you could easily build a whole 40-minute story out of that discovery process.
There's a whole section where it's like, we can't go more than like a few steps away from each other, or we'll both like feel horrific. And I don't think it does enough with that. Like, it just forces them to stay together, but like they don't really get inventive with any of that stuff. Not really.
Yeah, you could have used that. You could have had them try to maybe problem solve a little bit more. Whereas for the most part, they're just camping. They're just walking through, the wilderness, the camp occasionally. Yeah, that's kind of all they're doing.
It's convenient that effect doesn't start till they're outside and they've got like some level of freedom, and like not while they were climbing that 30-meter wall or whatever it was. And Picard was like, he was significantly further ahead because he was a much more confident climber. Like, good job they didn't go dizzy and fall off there then, right?
Yeah, I mean, I at least get the argument that the pain effect of them being too separated may be accompanied when the psychic link got stronger, because as the episode was showing, it was sort of gradually getting more and more intense. So at least it makes some sense with that.
It does, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, the actual payoff scenes are good. Obviously, there's some jokey stuff where it's like, oh, you're annoyed about this, or you just cracked a joke in your head. Don't, say it. It's almost a little bit, there's like a little bit of a rating like crutch here you have to just let them away with, is that one of them always says something out loud to show that they've heard something from the other, because technically at a certain point they could just sit there quietly and not say anything out loud, and they kind of do that at the very end when Riker's there, because they can get away with it, because Riker's like, wait, what are you laughing at? What are you doing? Am I missing something? Like, so you get like the reaction of someone else to sell it, but because they couldn't do that when it was just the two of them, one of them always just says an answer to what the other one said in their head, which
you can argue it's force of habit, right? Because none of the thoughts that they overhear are like projected intentionally. Like they're just like, they just catch the thought and respond to it.
Yeah. It was more once they like. It was more towards the end of the episode, once that they'd started communicating constantly, where they couldn't really hide their feelings. Everything was bubbling up, because they talked about how, not every thought they're having is relevant to what they're doing. They talk about how the human consciousness is kind of like so erratic because just random little things will pop up that are irrelevant to what you're actually focusing on, like a bit of a song here or a bit of a memory there, whatever. And they're like, hey, how do the telepaths actually deal with this? This is like a nightmare, having to like kind of sift through all the garbage to try and actually focus in on what's important. And so they sort of like bring some of these guys, but again, it'd have been nice to explore that maybe a little bit.
There's a few things that I think I wish this had done more with in terms of that side of it. Like, I like what's there, but like you could have easily done so much more and really focused in. Like, I don't think there was any point in the episode where they played off of something that couldn't be said because of like because this is the time that it's on TV. Like in terms of its like age rating guidance. Like,
oh yeah.
So one of them could have had a thought that was like, hey, we can't say that on TV, but you could have the other one react to the thought so that there's an innuendo that people get.
Oh, yeah.
They don't really play with that much. I feel like this is a missed opportunity to do something quite funny.
There's one kind of implication towards the end.
Yeah, but it's not like there's not enough
much
like that. Yeah,
there's like a little implication at the end. Yeah, I think even just like you do more with like have them actually be confronted by villains and have them be able to get out of it because they can communicate without the villains knowing, have them use it practically in a scene, have them use it to problem solve. And also, why isn't the end of this, maybe not the final scene, but why isn't the end of this crisis, let's say they get back in the ship, this is really starting to become a problem. Why isn't there a scene with Troy, where Troy actually being a regular telepath can help them and like help them like...
Does she even show up in this episode?
She's in one meeting scene. She's in a scene where they're talking right after Picard and that have been kidnapped. Like she's in that scene.
Unmemorable in this episode. I barely even remember her.
Yeah, that's all she's got, and there's no Geordi either. I don't even think he's in the episode at all.
No, and this happens pretty regularly. You'll rotate.
Yeah, it's fine. But I just think in this case it actually makes sense for her to like maybe hey, I've got expertise here. I can maybe help you a little bit since you're struggling. Yeah, I don't know. There was definitely just more to.
I feel like you could cut 80% of the background plot.
Yep.
And do so much more with this plot, and it could be a legitimately great episode.
Yeah, and obviously the one scene that is, I mean, the ending's pretty good as well, but the one scene in the middle that stands out is the campfire scene where he kind of just, she mentions a story about her ex-husband. I say ex, well, it's not ex, dead husband. She never divorced him, and Wesley. And like she stops because she like senses Picard feels something, and she never quite says what it is, but maybe. I was thinking jealousy at first, but as the conversation went on, it felt like no, it's probably more guilt than it is jealousy, based on like where the rest of the conversation goes.
Maybe a little bit both.
Yeah, a little both. Yeah, maybe it was jealousy once upon a time, but now it's guilt because they felt jealous of his best friend's wife.
I think it can be both at the same time. Right? Like he has a pang of jealousy first, and then gets guilty about that.
Yeah, so she's like, wait, I never knew you felt that way. And it becomes clear, like straight up, I was in love with you. I was in love with you when you were married to my best friend, and I felt really guilty. And they actually did a neat thing here where she's like, oh wait, that's why you didn't want me on the Enterprise back in season 1. I mean, that wasn't the exact line, obviously, but you didn't want me to join because you were just trying to stay away from me. And now things have obviously changed and developed since then. And they never quite obviously addressed the elephant in the room, which is, your husband's been dead for a while now. Like maybe there should be something here, kind of thing.
They definitely edge towards it because she's like, yes, and now we're friends. And he's like, yep, friends.
Yeah, and they hold, and it's an interesting moment actually from a performance level because they hold hands kind of awkwardly, and then they sit there for like a few seconds before she says, "Oh, I guess we should probably get some rest. Let's go to sleep." And I was thinking, what did they think right after that hand-holding moment? Because neither one of them are saying it out loud, and you could really infer or like theorize, like, is she feeling a moment of attraction in that point? Are they both feeling a sense of guilt? Are they both feeling a sense of something? And then, they just sort of quietly like lie next to each other, next to the fireplace or the campfire, and, go to sleep, right? But I was almost expecting, like, because she lies down first, and then Picard sort of slowly gets up, and I didn't think they were going to kiss her or anything, but I thought, is he going to like just spoon? Like I really thought he might. I thought like, oh, he can sense that she's cold and she's feeling lonely. He's going to warm her up, and that wouldn't even be that way. Even for platonic friends in this situation, when you're outside with nothing but a little fire, wouldn't be that strange to get some body heat. But I thought maybe it was going to do something else, and it doesn't. It just kind of lies there, and the scene moves on.
Which I don't hate, because I like them both being kind of awkward about it.
Oh yeah, and I think the reserved nature of it works. Yeah, for sure. It fits both of them.
Yeah.
Yeah, but the payoff to all this is later on when they're having dinner, and as soon as it cut to this scene, I'm like, that's a lot of candles. This feels very romantic all of a sudden. It feels like you're up to something here. And they mentioned that, okay, they've had the thing taken out, although we find out later in the scene that it wasn't taken out like immediately. Like it wasn't until the next day that they had these like transmitters like taken out of their necks. So she brings up that the previous night she couldn't sleep, and she could actually sense some of the things he was thinking about whilst he was sleeping. And this was the one little indication that maybe there was a dirty thought, because he's like, hey, I cannot be blamed for what my mind is thinking when I am asleep. And she's like, yeah, or awake. And it does like, honestly, like the way she is looking as she says those lines, I am like, you are flirting right now. You are inching towards something happening.
Oh yeah.
And then, of course, he actually kind of tries to advance it, and not even in like a overly like romantic way. He just kind of like goes over to sit with her, holds her hand, and says, "Hey, I felt that you've had feelings. You know how I feel. Maybe it's time we maybe explore them a little bit. Maybe we do something." And she kind of rejects it, but in a kind of a soft way, where it's not like a never. It's not like a. Well, it's just like, I should probably get going. But she also kisses him on the lips as well before she goes.
Some mixed signals going on here.
Very mixed. And it's kind of like, okay. And the one thing that I was getting, like, based on like the B plot, and if I was going to relate it anyway to what's going on in the A plot, is just
doing the writers a service by relating it at all.
I mean, yeah, maybe I am. But just this idea that the big theme of that B plot is that these two sides do not talk to each other at all. Like, to the point where they don't even have communication channels that they can, like, open up to talk to them. That's how closed off they are from each other. And Picard and Crusher have been closed off from each other, and this device gives them a chance to actually, like, fire some shots towards each other, if you will, and, like, maybe finally start progressing. I think they're trying to compare the two groups of people on this planet to Picard and Crusher not talking about their feelings. I think that's what they're going for. It's not great, but I think that's what it's there.
I'd say it's a stretch. I don't think it's a stretch. I think that's probably what the intention was. I don't think they like do anything with that to justify that being there.
Yeah, I'm not saying that it's impossible to do, but I do think, based on what we see in the episode, just focusing on more on Picard and Crusher and giving them more time to, not climb more caves or dodge fireballs. Yeah, there was a scene where they're going through a cave and there's like flames shooting up, and it's just kind of a nothing scene. It's whatever.
Yeah.
Like, they're doing more with the idea that they're linked telepathically. They don't know how to deal with that. They're revealing things to each other not supposed to reveal, like the fact that he doesn't want these fancy breakfasts she's bringing him.
And it turns out neither does she.
Yeah, they just both want a simple breakfast. What I thought was weird about this is I'm like, you're not going to offend her cooking because you're getting it from a replicator. So what? Like, why is this such a nerve-wracking thing to admit?
I assume it's more just for him. It's like, oh, she's putting thought into what she into. Maybe she's not like no effort into the cooking, but she's putting thought into the choices and the ideas and what she's bringing for the breakfast. And he's like, I'll just go along with it.
Yeah. Yeah, I guess she's thinking, oh, Jean-Luc Picard's a fancy man. He likes his fancy wines and
yeah.
It's not just tea, it's Earl Grey tea. He's a sophisticated man. He needs sophisticated stuff. And to be fair, normal, a croissant is still a bit on the posh side of breakfast. So fair enough. Unless you're putting some like Nutella on it, in which case you're simplifying it to child levels. But I bet he does. I bet he secretly cuts it open and puts some Nutella in there.
Sure, I'm quite excited because I haven't had a croissant in years at this point because they all contain milk, obviously. I know.
I actually didn't know that, but fair enough.
No, they pretty much all do. It's all because it's all butter, like butter croissants, aren't they?
Okay, that makes sense. Yeah, okay.
So Aldi are bringing out some vegan croissants next week. I'm like, I'm gonna have to try those.
I have to be honest. I've always found croissants to feel. I don't know. I never really liked them that much. They always feel a bit heavy for me.
I like them, but it's not something I ever had a lot of. But just like every so often, it was like a go-to. When you're on holiday, they have like continental breakfasts. Or is it croissant? That was the go-to. And I haven't had one in so long. I just want one.
Yeah, it's just a bit sickening for me for whatever reason. They're a bit stronger, I guess, than
my go-to breakfast these days is a bagel.
Oat Garten Bran Flakes for me is my go-to. Doesn't sound that exciting, but I quite like it, and it's healthy enough. So
I do a bagel. Like I have different ones. I rotate up, like plain cinnamon raisin, or I don't know, get a sesame seed one sometime. Yeah, and then just stick some honey on them.
That's the one meal of the day that I have the same thing every day, because at least then I've had something vaguely healthy at least once per day. That's the logic behind it. And I'm too lazy to do anything else of that when I just wake up. So
that's fair. Mine's not exactly complicated.
Oh no. Yeah, but some people are like, I go cook a breakfast every morning.
I cook a breakfast probably like twice a year.
Yeah.
Oh, that's about it. And don't get me wrong, I enjoy it when I do, and it is a treat. But I'm too lazy for that.
Oh, that's what breakfast for dinner's for. That's when you cook breakfast.
To be fair, I have cereal at like nighttime more often than I do in the morning.
That's fair. That's fair. Anyway, what were we talking about? We got into a subject of breakfast because
they talked about breakfast a lot during this, and it made me want breakfast food.
They did. They started with a breakfast scene, then they talked about the breakfast. Then it didn't end with the breakfast, but it ended with dinner. Although if Picard had played his cards right, it might have ended with breakfast the next morning, if you catch my drift. Yeah, it ends in this amicable thing where he blows out the candle, and it's kind of like maybe there's a spark there, maybe there's something there, maybe they're starting to deal with their feelings, and yeah, it's kind of interesting hearing Picard actually just admit, I was kind of in love with my best friend's wife, and that was kind of weird. I wasn't super proud of that. It's a little bit interesting for building some character. Do you think this? I assume at this point they knew this was their last season, and they're intentionally hitting some of these beats that they've been teasing in various ways throughout the show, but they were actually addressing them outright.
I think they definitely knew at this point. When they're intentionally calling back to season 1,
yeah, that's a big sign.
I think usually when they're doing that, it's because they know, and fair enough. I'm glad they know. Like, They clearly knew relatively early on in the season when it was coming to this.
If not before they started writing the whole thing, it's possible. I haven't looked into it to see when they found out exactly, because this was like a straight to syndication show, so I don't really know how it worked compared to like a traditional network renewal system.
The point is, they definitely knew by now, as far as I'm concerned.
No, I agree.
So it's. While obviously we've not heard great things about the quality of the rest of the season, I like, in theory at least, they should be picking up some of those beats for quite a few of the characters, because they'll know, hey, this is the last chance to give, if this is the last Troy episode, for example, they'll probably be doing some closure and, hitting some beats with it.
She'll finally,
whether they'll be good or not,
yeah. She'll finally be honest to her mother about how much of a pain she is.
Yeah.
That said, though, I don't remember much about the last episode we did at TNG, but I do remember it was a Luxwana Choi episode. But I could not tell you what the premise of that episode was if my life depended on it.
To be fair, how many Troy episodes could you really nail down?
That's a good point.
Probably two or three over the whole show, realistically.
That's a good point in general, I suppose. But anyway, that is attached. It's got some good high moments for Picard and Beverly, but the rest of it's kind of a dud.
Yeah, a little bit wasted potential.
Like not like a horrific, painful to watch dud, just kind of a dull, mediocre dud. So there you go. Next time it will be Deep Space Nine. That's next on schedule. But when we come back to the Next Generation, we're doing an episode called Force of Nature. Here's the description as per IMDb. While searching for a missing Federation medical transport, the Enterprise is accosted by 2 scientists from a nearby planet who claim that cumulative exposure to warp energy is weakening the fabric of space. Oh, it's interesting, I guess.
It's a solid premise.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know what their like intent is, assuming they're lying or if they're incorrect or the reason why I'm assuming for sure they're incorrect, I probably would assume that they were probably incorrect, but because there's so much Trek after this point, I've got a funny feeling they're not going to rule out warp travel before the end of the show.
Unless they are correct and they just figure out a solution.
Oh, that's possible, true, yeah. Yeah, they throw in some marmalade or something into the warp drive and that.
Oh, good now, yeah.
That fixes it up, yeah. Well, I'm not going to eat the marmalade. But I'll find a use for it.
I assume, like, without having seen anything of the episode yet, it feels like it's going to be some sort of parallel for, like, global warming with, like, car exhausts, maybe.
Oh, maybe.
I could be way off base there.
Depends how hot a topic that was by what?
No, it would have been a thing by then because you had ad campaigns for it.
Okay, I was like 4 at the time. I don't really remember how much.
No, but I've seen them because it was topic of interest.
Fair enough. All right, well, we'll find out how that goes next time with TNG. We will be back soon with the next Deep Space Nine episode. So let us know what you thought of this one in the comments. Like, subscribe, all that stuff helps us out a bunch. And I suppose sorry for the big huge gap that happened throughout most of 2024. But we are back on track and seriously determined to keep going, and not just to finish TNG because we're just at the start of Deep Space Nine. I actually want to watch all of that. Yeah,
and then there's like way more Trek still to go after that as well.
There's Voyager and Enterprise. And at some point, I may watch those last 4 Discovery episodes that I'm supposed to watch.
We're only like halfway through Trek. Ish.
Maybe all right, less. Everyone, let us know what you thought of this one. See you next time. Like, subscribe, ding the bell, support the patreon.com/MailFuzzTV if you want to keep all the content coming. Thank you very much for joining us. I don't have like a special outro for this. It's just my usual TV one, right?
No, you did.
Oh, yeah, it was always something about Wesley doing something stupid related to the plot. Somewhere out there, Wesley Crusher's had one of these transmitters put in his neck, but his partner is confused because they can't hear anything.